TV podcast. On today's episode, we're revisiting what's probably the most popular time travel comedy movie of all time, Back to the Future. Welcome to the show.
What do you think? The Libyans.
Oh my God. Do you know, it's so awful as a child. This sounds really awful. Whenever we saw VW Bus, my siblings and I would yell, "Who do you think? The Libyans!" Oh,
I mean, you can't have a movie that you don't quote from when,
I quote this movie in my daily life.
Oh,
I'm telling you.
easily.
And nobody knows what I'm talking about. I don't care.
Easily. Yeah.
I mean, they already don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I always love when, you're having a conversation with someone and they don't know what something is. And I'm pretty sure that happened earlier today. We were talking to my niece and we all said something and she had no idea what it was. And it was something so we were like, "Aw, wah, wah, wah."
Mama. Like working with young people.
Yeah.
And they don't know what you're talking about.
No.
I say to my kids all the time, when I was your age, I never chased a boy or called a boy or sat in a parked car with a boy. There are so many quotable lines from this movie that, I've seen this movie a million times. Like, my family, it was one of our movies that was on rotation. Like, we had a whole cabinet full of Betamax tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And this was one that we watched over and over again.
Yeah.
I never saw it in the theater.
No, we didn't either. Ours was VHS and we did the same thing. So I'm sure many of you know, I think I've referenced this on many of our podcasts, is that my dad would sit and record off the TV. So you had to stop for commercials so you wouldn't have the commercials in there. And my mom to this day still has them. They're all handwritten labels. Mm-hmm. There's about 3 movies per VHS tape. And there has to be hundreds of movies that we have on VHS at my mom's house still. And one of these days I need to buy a VCR and go get them all. And
I have a VCR.
I'll just bring them here.
It might be broken because I tried to watch something and it was all like squealy. It's VHS to DVD converted. But yeah, my family had a notebook. All the tapes were numbered.
Oh,
and so we had them cataloged.
You were fancy.
We were fancy.
Could you cross-reference them and everything?
Yeah, they were all
Dog
numbered
and dead,
and in alphabetical order.
Oh,
because a Betamax could hold 2 movies. And every time there was a movie channel preview on cable, which was a thing, like you would get like HBO for a week or whatever. Mm-hmm. My dad would tape like every movie. Not every movie, but like a lot of movies he would tape.
Now I have a technical question. Okay. If you had them in alphabetical order, did he wait to tape movies on the same tape that would go in the same alphabetical order?
So this was an undertaking that happened at one point, that it was decided that it would be cataloged. And then it started from there. So then at the end of the notebook, things are just haphazardly added on there. But like he originally had them handwritten in this notebook in alphabetical order and then with the corresponding tape number.
Okay.
Because the tapes weren't in alphabetical order. You know what I mean? They were in numerical order.
I gotcha. So gotcha. Okay.
The notebook was in
gotcha. Order. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Then. Okay, cool.
And then it became weird. There were so many. And we would on movie night, we would decide what movie, like we would vote. Mm-hmm. There were 6 of us. We would vote on what movie we were going to watch, from the list.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes we got to choose, but Dad probably made a lot of suggestions. Don't you guys want to watch this tonight? Well, I think we probably do.
Okay, this has nothing. This is the longest tangent. I'm sorry about the tangent, but it is in the name of the show. I remember that one of the movies was Reefer Madness.
Oh,
and I would see the name Reefer Madness because it was on a tape with, like, something else that we watched all the time, like, I don't know,
Mhm.
Fox and the Hound or something,
Yeah.
like a family movie, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "What is Reefer Madness?" And then at some point I learned what reefer was, and then I was like, "What the hell are my parents
What are they
watching?"
watching?
And then as an adult, like, probably 15 years ago, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna watch Reefer Madness."
Mhm.
It's just a black and white movie about, like, hysteria about marijuana, like,
Oh.
you should watch it.
Okay.
But, like,
Interesting.
there were movies on there that were always skipped. It was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, are we gonna watch" "Oh, no, we ain't gonna watch that."
We're not gonna watch Porky's again, okay.
There's no Porgy in that. But that is that yeah, we watched Back to the Future. Sometimes we'd be like, "Let's watch Back to the Future."
Mhm.
And it yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen it 87,000,000
I
times.
I'm sure I have too. Yes, we discussed this. We're like, well, we can sure just talk about this and wouldn't even have to have had to watch it
Right.
recently.
I
Although it was randomly on TV like the last weekend and I
Oh, really?
watched it. Yeah.
Well, I discovered that I have the Blu-ray,
Oh, okay.
but I don't have Blu-ray in my office, so I had to bring it to the living room, and I had to have my son put it in for me. 'Cause I don't know how to use the PlayStation or whatever it is that I use, and
No,
then it's a whole thing.
I would not know how to do any of that either.
But I watched it, and then I was like, "Yeah, I've seen this." So I was also doing other things
Mhm.
because it's wonderful, but then you stop because 'cause you're like, "Oh my gosh, I love this scene."
Exactly, and I keep thinking too, because again, I have if it's just on randomly, I have many a day over the last, 30 plus years been cleaning my house, cleaning, whatever, and I just have the TV on in the background.
Mhm.
And those are good days where you're like or, a rainy day or a snowy day, "Oh, look, the Back to the Future trilogy's on. Oh, look, this, whatever." I end up watching, of course, things like, TV shows too, Friends, whatever. This is one of those shows that's always on.
Mhm.
And it's funny because every once in a while I think, "Man, when was the last time I watched the very beginning?" Because you always catch it, like,
Yeah.
in other parts. So I'm like, "Oh, I gotta watch this from the very beginning. I forgot about that part," And it's so funny because it's like there's some normal stuff before he goes to the
There's very
past, and
important
so
information in the beginning.
yeah,
A lot of very important information in
yeah.
the beginning. Like, we find out in the beginning that Doc Brown burned down his house
Mhm.
doing an experiment. You
Right.
if you don't watch the beginning, you don't know that, and
Yeah.
you find out about the high school and, all of that
Mhm.
stuff, so you
Mhm.
have to watch the beginning.
Yeah.
And I knew about this movie when it was in the theaters. I was in, like where was I? Hold on.
Would have been 85.
In
Um,
1985, so when it was released yeah, I was in the 5th or 6th grade. I remember that my friend Lisa we need to have Lisa on here
we
because we talk about
do.
her a lot
We
because
do.
she and I grew up together, and so she and I shared a lot of pop culture memories, but she had, like, a different pop culture thing going on in her house than I did in my house.
Right.
So, she had seen the movie in the theater, and then our Scholastic Book Fair had a Back to the Future book, and I
Oh,
remember she got the Back to
yeah.
the Future book, and so we were
Mm.
looking at it, and I didn't know anything about it, but I knew Michael J. Fox from Family Ties,
Mhm.
and Donna, who was in my class, thought he was so cute, and I was like,
Mm.
"He's not cute." He is cute.
He is cute.
I'm not gonna say he's not cute, but at the time, I was like, "Ugh, Michael J. Fox."
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was a big deal at the time. This script was rejected more than 40 times before it was picked up by the studio,
Oh.
because for real, the script is kinda weird.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it is, like, the premise and the actors and the vibe, like, the whole vibe of it. You
Mhm.
just have to put aside like, all your expectations.
Yeah.
You have to put aside reality and
Yeah.
just be in the movie
Yeah.
because there's so many plot holes in this movie that it is ridiculous.
That's true. I mean, we're just talking about Back to the Future, the original, but they always play all 3 of them.
Mhm.
And, you do start to, like just thinking about it in general, so it does apply to this, how if if you change that part, then that would change more than just that, you
Exactly.
can't if you think about it too hard, you have to have a major willing suspension of disbelief
Absolutely.
because It's great for a movie, and wouldn't it be great if we could do this? If we could, get in the DeLorean and, you know, just go
Go
back
back and see our parents.
and see what was happening,
Yeah.
and nothing changes. But when you start changing things, you're thinking only these little aspects are gonna change.
I think in the 80s, you could have more of a, this is just for fun type of movie.
Mhm.
And now today, things have to be like more, oh, that could never happen.
Right, a little bit
Like,
more realistic,
yeah.
but
And
yeah.
this is a fun movie. And there's Back to the Future time travel rules. Like every movie has to make its own time travel rules. Just like
Mhm.
there's vampire rules.
Mhm.
There's time travel rules.
Right.
And the time travel rules in Back to the Future, there is no butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Like they don't change very much
Right.
because when George finds his confidence, when he
Mhm.
lays out Biff, he finds his confidence, he becomes
Mhm.
a success. He still buys the same house in Hill Valley
Yeah.
and he still stays there.
Right.
And his kids, as adults, still
Are
live with
living there
him,
as adults, yeah.
even though David has a job in an office and he's
Mhm.
like a grown adult.
And they're clearly have money because he's a best-selling author now.
But is he? Because she's like, "Oh, it's your first novel."
Oh, your first
So
novel,
maybe
that's
he was
true.
writing, I thought about that today or yesterday when I was watching it. Like maybe he was writing nonfiction before and now
Mm.
he wrote a novel and he's like, "See, I told you if you put your mind to it, you'll accomplish
You can
anything."
accomplish anything.
Side note, as an author,
Mhm.
I always considered myself a George McFly author
Oh.
until I actually published because I wouldn't let anybody read anything I wrote. What if they said it was no good? What if they laughed at me? I just
Exactly.
don't think I could take that kind of rejection.
She's George's twin rose in it for any born. Um.
See, we could have absolutely just forget talking about the movie. We're literally just gonna recite
We'll
the
just
movie.
ad lib lines from it.
In 2015, Robert Zemeckis, who owns the rights to the franchise with Bob Gale, they're the creators,
Mhm.
said that he would not authorize a reboot or a remake ever in either of their lifetimes.
Mm.
Not sure if that includes like continuations or sequels or whatever,
Mhm.
but I don't like reboots anyway of like classic movies. This is a
Yeah.
classic movie.
Yeah, let's not I mean, it would ruin it. You
Yeah,
can't
you
yeah,
can't do it.
it's they try too hard. We've seen that with just in general sequels to a lot of movies aren't as successful because you're like, "Oh my god, that was the greatest movie ever," and you try another one,
Mhm.
and then you're like,
So, and
you're
you have
trying too hard.
expectations.
Yeah.
I I think let's normalize doing in the style of this
Mhm.
movie. Like,
Right.
not saying this is a reboot of Back to the Future. It's in the style of Back to the Future.
Mhm.
Let's do that because I hate reboots.
Yeah.
I don't know of a single movie reboot that I like
Yeah.
at all.
And then there's the movies where there's several over decades, like, what's that one most famous A Star Is Born.
Oh yeah,
So, like, decades apart, a new one came out. There's 3 of them, right? There's 3 yeah,
there's
3 of
three.
them. And I'm like, they're all a little different, and I've
Mhm.
actually never seen the Barbara Streisand one, and the
Okay,
only reason I saw the really old one was it was randomly on TV one day, and I'm
mhm.
like, "Oh,"
The
and
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland, and
Mhm.
I only saw, like, the very end, and I'm like, "Oh, I kinda wanna watch this whole thing," although it creeps me out a little bit too, and I was like, "This is interesting," and now I kinda wanna watch the
I really want to
Streisand,
watch it.
because I'm like, "Oh." So I think about that with something like this, maybe a different version might work.
Yeah, go ahead and do something similar, but I don't want to. I don't want to
Right.
do. I
It'd
don't
be
like
like
that.
trying to do that to Dirty Dancing, and we just can't have
I
that
mean,
but
that
yeah.
happened. So Eric Stoltz was the second choice for Marty, as Michael J. Fox was unavailable. That's well-known information
Mhm.
now because we have the internet, but it wasn't so much before when
Mhm.
you could find out anything you wanted. In the chase scene in the mall parking lot, it's Eric Stoltz in the car,
Oh,
being chased by the terrorists,
interesting.
and it cost $4 million to replace Eric Stoltz with Michael J. Fox because they had been filming for like 5 months
Oh, wow.
when they decided it's not working. He was
Mhm.
he was like very dramatic and he didn't really have like comedy chops.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just very serious.
Oh,
Which the
that makes
premise of
sense.
this movie absolutely has to be a comedy
Yeah.
because it's really depressing.
Yeah.
It's serious. It doesn't make any sense. In the opening
Mm.
scene, the mom from Just the 10 of Us, remember Just the 10 of Us?
Mm-hmm.
She's the newscaster reading the story
That's right.
about the missing plutonium. Her name is Deborah Harmon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, every time I remember seeing Just the 10 of Us, and I was like, that's the lady from Back to the
She's
Future.
the news story lady.
So I wanted to point out also Doc's house in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing I didn't notice because you and I, okay, we were texting the other day that we'll notice things because we have bigger TVs
Yeah.
because we didn't see it in the theater. So now we like notice things because our TVs are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Doc's house in 1985 is the garage so in 1955, he lives in that big old cool house,
Yeah.
which was like his family home because he tells Marty at one point that he like spent his whole family fortune on figuring out time travel.
Yeah.
So in 1955, he lives in the main house, and then the garage is separate, and they live on Riverside Drive, which is kind of up all by itself. Well, we find out in the beginning that he burned down that house in an experiment. So in 1985, he's living in the garage.
That's right.
And the garage is like behind the parking lot of a Burger King, which I never noticed until yesterday.
Oh.
Because when Marty leaves to get to school, damn, I'm late for school.
Oh, yeah.
He comes out of the garage into the parking lot of a Burger King.
That's right.
And that's on John F. Kennedy Drive. That's a block past Maple.
Who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
Oh my God. That's funny because that one day I saw something about John F. Kennedy Drive and I was like, that's a block past Maple.
And if you said that to somebody in our town, they'd go, "No, it's not.
No, it's not. That's
You're
Wando.
way on a different side of it." You'd be like, "Never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind."
Riverside Drive. Okay, I just want to point that out. I found that
Just
very
teasing,
interesting.
honey. Nobody has 2 television sets.
See, it's like Friends. If you don't know what I'm saying when I say, last night Darth Vader came down from the planet Vulcan and told me if I didn't take Lorraine out, he would melt my brain. Then we shouldn't be friends.
No, exactly.
Marty's, sorry, I've drank too much.
So true.
Marty's drink of choice is Diet Pepsi free.
Mm-hmm.
We see the cans there. And so when he goes into the diner in the 50s, he asks for a Pepsi free. And he's like, "Do you want a Pepsi, man? You got to pay for it." And it's like, "Just give me a tab."
He wants a tab. Can't
Can't
give you a
tab
tab
go.
unless you order something. Look, just give me something that doesn't have any sugar in it. Something without any sugar. Hands him some coffee.
Okay. So I'm obsessed with time travel as a fictional device. And like, I'm not going to go back in time. And as soon as I saw this movie, was instantly forever for the rest of my life obsessed with time travel. I also wanted to go back to a 1950s diner. I am to this day obsessed.
I know.
With time travel stories and movies. And this was the beginning of all of that.
That sounds like something I want to go do right now.
Absolutely.
Go to a diner in the 50s. And like every part of this. Yeah. Getting to see imagine like going and driving to where your family home is supposed to be. And they're just beginning to build the neighborhood. Like that kind of thing even.
Yeah. Bring me a dream, make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Yeah.
And can you imagine like their big story of their town is Save the Clock Tower. And it was struck by lightning on, of course, this magical night where this is why everything comes together. But your whole life, that clock doesn't work in the middle of your town. And then
That's why he goes back in town.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's making noise. And
you're like, wait a second. What? That thing doesn't work.
Crazy. I love it.
That's so good.
I love Hill Valley in the 50s.
I know.
I want to be there.
That's great.
I want to be there. When Doc sends Einstein in the DeLorean, okay, so this bothered me yesterday. He's like, okay, if my calculations are correct. So he'd never done this before.
Right.
He did not know if this would work.
No.
He sent that car flying at 88 miles an hour toward him and Marty. And then Marty tries to step out of the way.
And he stops him.
He stops it. He's like, nope, if we're going to die, we're going to die together.
Wait.
If my calculations are correct.
Yeah.
When this thing hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious stuff.
Yeah.
Just the USA Network version
of what he actually says.
Yeah. So, yeah, he didn't know.
No.
He didn't know.
And they, legit, like, I mean, if all of a sudden that doesn't work, you're dead.
You're dead.
Yeah.
You're both dead. You're not going to survive a hit by a DeLorean.
Yeah. And then, you know what? The cops come by and think, this dog just hit these two people at the car.
This dog drives this car.
He's just sitting in the car. Poor Einie. Oh.
Okay, tell me that Einstein in the 50s wasn't the same Einstein in the 80s.
I'm assuming that's one of those things where you just get the same dog and name it the same thing over and over. Because dogs don't live to be 30.
In the 50s, Einstein's sitting there and he's a puppy.
And he's
like a year old.
Yeah, like I was like, did they try to play this off like he's young Einstein?
It's like Einstein too.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so when Lorraine's dad says, another one of these damn kids jumped in front of my car, I always thought, how often do these damn kids
jump in front of your car? I mean, I will say that tree branch is awfully good for peeping if you're a peeping Tom.
Well, I feel like he does it all the time, but is he peeping on Lorraine or is that Lorraine's neighbor? I don't understand. I've never been able to figure that out.
You're right. Me neither. Like, yeah, which house are we looking at? And then he goes down and then boom, gets hit. These kids jumped in front of my car.
Seriously, does this happen all the time?
Yeah. Because if that does happen all the time, how come she didn't marry into the other? Oh, maybe he didn't hit them. Maybe they just jumped in front of this car.
Inside. Yeah, I don't know. Why didn't she marry any of the other people that he hit?
Jumped in front of your car.
Oh. Also, Johnny Be Good. Johnny Be Good is the song that's sung by Marty. But did you know that wasn't sung by Michael J. Fox? I have never seen... Okay, this movie did not try to hide in any way, shape, or form. This is not Michael J. Fox singing this song.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like him.
No.
We're not fooled.
No.
It was sung by Mark Campbell for the movie, and the guitar solo was done by Tim May. So, yeah, I don't know if you could tell, but that wasn't him.
I could tell that wasn't him singing. I'm like, interesting.
Even as a kid, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not that guy.
You're like, no. I remember when watching this when I was young. And maybe the very first time I saw it, being confused by how were Lorraine and George, how were the actresses that played them then young? I thought they were played by older people.
That is wonderful.
And then how did they become young? And then I got older and realized, hey, silly, it's the other way around.
I love that.
And it's like, I mean, the change. And I mean, maybe that might have been like the first time I saw something where they really did something like that. Like aging makeup. I never really paid attention. You know, I didn't really know that Sophia wasn't that old on Golden Girls. So to me, that was like one of the biggest things, one of my takeaways. I was like, I just remember specifically being like, how'd they get him to look like that?
I don't think I ever thought about it.
Yeah. And I mean, and you know when I realized, I think because, why can't I think of what her name is in real life? Lorraine. Leah Thomas.
Leah Thompson.
I always want to call her Thomas too.
That's okay.
Leah Thompson is, she was in a lot of other things then. And then I was like, I mean, I feel like that's kind of, and again, I was young, so I don't remember when that like light turned on, but that was always a big thing for me. So, and she was just so funny, just being so in love with him. And also though, like he gets taken into the house unconscious, I assume.
Yeah. Because he hit his noggin.
And let's put him in Lorraine's bed. That sounds like a great idea.
Safe.
So she takes his pants off and for no reason. And then is talking to, him in her room. And of course, like saw his underwear and thinks he's Calvin Klein. It's like at the end, oh my God, it's my mom. Put your pants on. And I'm like, what is happening?
Because we have to see that everything that Lorraine as an adult told her young son, Marty, it was
Mhm.
just a lie.
Mhm.
Like, I never sat in a parked car with a boy. Really, mom?
Talk to the boy on the
Like,
phone.
oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, you smoke too?
Right. Marty, you're
So,
acting.
yeah, she takes his pants off because we have to see that Lorraine is just a horny teenager.
Right. And I'm kind of like,
So
okay, so let's go back to the fact that this doesn't make sense if something got changed. So let's say that's George that gets hit by the car.
mhm.
I mean,
Did she
yeah,
take his
so
pants
your
off?
1985 mom is telling you you can't do any of those
Mhm.
things. So why was it different? Yeah. I mean, at that rate,
Because
Lorraine had already done those things. And then maybe, do you think George was so innocent and prude that
mhm.
she then changed and then was like, "Oh yeah, I never did any of that stuff." So that wouldn't be proper for anyone to
Yeah,
know.
because she was, like, just desperate to have someone, and then he was brought into her house, and she probably took his pants off, and then it was at that moment that she realized that she was gonna spend the rest of her life with
Yeah.
him, and yeah, that's what she's saying, is like, I didn't make a choice, it just kind of made
Mhm.
itself.
Yeah. It's
But
always
then in the
interesting.
future, in the alternate future, she made the choice, and he, like, proved his confidence and whatever to her,
Mhm.
and then he stood up to Biff, so
Right.
he was no longer being held down by Biff, who excuse me, in the future, Biff owns his own business,
Right.
so, excuse me, that's an accomplishment.
Right. Yeah, they make it seem like he's all and I'm like, "No, he owned a detailing shop?" I
But,
mean,
like,
no.
he's scared of George. That was 30 years ago. Is George
Mhm.
still hitting him?
Right. And you're still bigger than him.
Is he hitting you, Biff?
Well, you can tell us. Um, yeah, is it when that happens, you knock him out and then, like I mean, one, Marty punches
Yeah.
Biff in the very beginning when he gets
I
back
think
to
Biff's just a big softy anyway,
yeah,
which is funny because Thomas Wilson is, like, not a tough guy. He's,
yeah,
like, a nice guy,
yeah.
and he's a comedian. He does, like, I think he was here a couple years
Oh,
ago doing
really?
stand-up or whatever. But, yeah, he's, like, a super nice guy who happens to look like a big bully and
Menacing.
play a bully
Yeah.
very well.
When Marty okay, so when the Libyans come and they've discovered that Doc has stolen their, plutonium, Marty
And replace
just
it with pinball
yeah, Marty just
machine parts.
jumps in the car, whatever, and then starts speeding through. Okay, I'm sorry, having worked at the mall for 20 years. You really I mean, maybe it's a way bigger mall than I can even
Uh-huh.
tell, but you can't get up to 88 miles an hour on a straightaway at a mall parking lot. So there's that, first
I
of
don't know,
all.
that JCPenney parking lot was pretty big.
Well, I guess I'm thinking about trying to, yeah, drive across out there, maybe.
I think we'd have to try Oakview because it's kinda
Yeah.
circular and
It's more
unobstructed.
yeah, less area where you'd have to try to make a turn quick.
Yeah.
I bet maybe you could, now that we're oh, I guess there's, like, the outer ring road. So you're right, maybe. Alright,
I'm
we'll figure
sorry,
that out.
officer, we were just testing a theory
We'd
about
be like, hear us out. Remember Back to the Future?
we were seeing if we could get up to 88
Can
miles per hour.
you imagine an officer would be like,
Officer,
"Officer, have you
when
seen
this
Back to the Future?"
when this thing hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see
You're
some
gonna
serious stuff.
I wonder if anyone's ever said I need to ask officers that I know if anyone's ever said that to them.
And you're like, "Ma'am, transfer behind your
And
back,
that's not
please."
funny at all. "Ma'am, have you been drinking?"
Why, yes.
Um,
Why, yes, I have.
yeah.
Sorry.
So,
So,
of
yeah,
course,
you're right.
Marty ends up hits the scarecrow and is in the farm.
I love that part. I
Um,
absolutely love that part of the movie.
and then, of course, when he, like,
Shoot it! It's
shoot
already in a human form.
him! He's got a little magazine that the little boy does or whatever, and, they so then Marty comes busting out of the barn to leave or whatever and kills one of the pines, which also changes the name of the mall because it's now Lone Pine
I
Mall.
love that. I love those little details.
Yeah.
Like how the clock little mantle place is broken in the future, but it
Mhm.
wasn't in the other
Yeah.
future. But go ahead.
I do love that because yeah, you don't really, like, hear that. It's all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, my pines, my
Yeah, you just
pines."
see it.
And it just
Why
changes the
you?
name. So, the other thing is, like, the car dies a lot, of course, and I'm thinking it's because of they need the plutonium, right?
Right.
But
he said
is
one
that
one thing, one trip.
only to go time travel? Because
Clearly not.
how does he get the car started again for them to use it? I mean, I know they get it, like,
Yeah,
towed to
I don't know.
docks, but then they end up driving it again later. They
Maybe
don't have any
it sounded like the
plutonium.
battery, so I don't know.
Mm,
Because okay, so Doc, he took it to the mall in his truck, but he still drove it.
mhm,
Like, even before the plutonium, it was
right,
running. So then once Marty was in the past and then it
mhm,
wouldn't start for whatever reason, they still got it to Doc's place. How'd they get
right.
it to Doc's place?
Yeah, and then at the end, to get it to the start line
Yeah,
when they're gonna go back to the future.
right. Yeah, I'm not
So,
sure what the
yeah,
malfunction was. It was probably a bad battery.
yeah.
I don't
But
I don't know DeLoreans.
I love when he gets well, here's also a funny story is like, so then Marty's like he's like, I have to be dreaming, like whatever. He's in town
Mhm.
and
Mr. Sandman, bring me a
finds a
dream.
paper and it tells him in 1955 he uses well, when his watch starts beeping when he's in the payphone. Um he looks up he's like, "Oh, good, you're still alive." Is what he says
Yeah,
about
that's
Doc.
funny. I think he's just his brain
Maybe
just
his
isn't
brain's a little scrambled, okay.
comprehending. Yeah,
Maybe it was like, "Oh, good, you're alive." Maybe he
yeah.
doesn't know how old Doc is. Anyway,
Well, he's still, even
yeah,
though I went back, you're still, I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know. And that he doesn't even recognize that he lives in the same place
that's true.
because he's like, it's on Riverside,
Yeah. Oh, that's
which,
true.
do you know what Riverside is? Are you going to order something, kid?
Yeah. Me too. Dude, you
Dude,
just jump ship?
jump ship.
So he shows up, of course, to Doc's place, and he's like, "Get in here." And he puts a device on his head,
Yeah.
and he's like, "You're here to tell me." And then he's like, "I'm from the future." And Doc's like, "Damn, this thing doesn't work." And he gets mad and he's all like, "Ronald Reagan, the actor? Next thing you're gonna tell me."
Which is great because the movie that's playing at the theater is a Ronald Reagan movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, just to remind us that he wasn't a
Yes.
duh.
And I love he shoves him out the front door and then he's like, "Doc, I know how you got the cut on your head. You were trying to fix your light bulb or something in the bathroom and you fell and you hit your head on the side of the sink. And when you came to, you wrote down the flux capacitor, which is what makes
Time
time
travel
travel
possible.
possible."
What's cute is
And then Doc opens the door and looks at him like,
what's adorable is that they are, like, BFFs in the
mm-hmm.
future, and I don't know how this happened.
Right,
It's creepy and weird. Obviously, Marty's parents don't pay a lot of attention to him anyway.
right.
But then he goes back in time, and he meets Doc,
Mm-hmm.
and they become fast friends again.
Right.
Because when Lorraine comes over, they have,
Mm-hmm.
like, this kind of bro glance between them, like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, she's crazy,"
Yep.
and yeah,
Hi, my uncle, Doc.
my Uncle Doc Brown.
Hi.
Marty just keeps doing things that make him more dreamy to his
Mm-hmm.
mom.
To his mom.
She's like, "Look, he's on a skateboard.
Isn't he a
Look at me, absolute dream."
dream? Oh, I love it. His
I don't
name is
know.
Calvin
I'm
Klein.
going down. Oh my
Where
god,
did he
she is
come from?
so horny.
Oh, yeah,
She
she
needs to
totally is.
calm down.
She does.
I don't know how she didn't ever move on from George in the original timeline because she's like,
Right.
yeah,
Well, and it's kind of like, and again, that I mean, I know everything has to happen for a reason. So of course, after George knocks Biff out, then she like is all like, "Oh, now
oh,
you're
I
dreamy."
love you because it's so easy to get my attention.
I mean, and I don't know why even Marty would have thought like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," because nice girls don't like it when
Yeah.
when you come on to them.
You
No,
mean you're gonna
wait, you're gonna
touch
be
her
touching
on her?
on her.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I love it.
such good times.
It's a great movie.
I know everybody knows like the whole premise, but one of my other disturbing factors is when it comes time for him to leave at the end, and he's got to go way out there. When the timer goes off, the car doesn't start.
Mhm.
How then does the timing
How does it
still
work out?
get exactly correct.
I don't know, but let me tell you how this scene stresses me out so bad.
To this day, I can't watch. I mean, you're like, I know what's going to happen, and I still
Mhm.
get stressed out.
I watched it last night so
Yeah.
stressed out. And
Doc,
the worst part
it's
is
unplugged, Doc. Doc, it's unplugged.
it's
How are you
freaking
going to get that
unplugged.
back?
It's freaking unplugged. The worst part is when Doc gets down, he like zip lines down to the bottom.
Yeah.
He just sits there.
Yeah.
He thinks about it.
Yeah.
And
He's
then
like,
he looks at it.
Huh?
And I'm like,
Huh?
Doc, oh God.
He is not making, he's not moving quickly. And I do love too, where at the end, I mean, when he has to like circle it onto, first of all, then when he circles it onto the clock, I'm like, that's just going to come off. That's not going to hold your weight.
How strong is
So then he goes down there and then, but I love like when everything starts to fall apart. Yeah. He has way too much pausing and looking, going, oh,
right? Just do it.
And
oh my God.
And when Marty's driving, he can see it happening and unfolding. And he's like, oh my God, what's happening?
Sure.
I mean, can you imagine? Again, here's what the movie they need to make.
The observer.
They mistime it, and the lightning strikes, and he doesn't go back.
And he
to
doesn't
the
go
future.
back. And we're just like, wah, wah.
So what happens at that point? We need that
He marries
movie.
Lorraine. I don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Let's make that movie.
I want to know, like, movie. Okay, I need a movie from the perspective of all of the observers, like the homeless dude, and like he just crashed into like the Church of God or something. That was the movie theater. Like, and now somebody's got
drivers.
He's got to clean this up. And what about Doc just like came down from the clock on that thing?
Yeah.
And now the next morning, people are like, what is this zip line doing attached to the thing? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, and they're going to be like, who made this happen to this clock? Was that lightning or did something weird happen? Because what's going on here?
Like, the clock is on fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
he's responsible.
How is this happening? Yeah.
And he's still apparently, does he still burn down his, I guess we never find that out. We never find out if he still burned down his house.
Yeah, we never find out anything that if his life has changed by that part.
Because we don't see Doc at home. We only see him in. When did he read the letter? Did he read it right away? And then he was like, okay, so on this date in 1985, I'm going to have to wear a bulletproof vest. Or did he wait until 1985 to put on, like, to read it?
Right.
Because if you don't want to know too much about your future, it could
No.
have disastrous consequences or whatever he said. I don't know.
You're gonna have the chance that your life depends on it. Yeah, I bet he waits.
You think he waits? I mean, he wrote on it, like, don't open until 1985.
Right.
Does
But
he
Doc
wait?
ripped it up.
Yeah. And then he taped it back
And then
together.
he taped it all back
In
together.
order to tape it back, did he keep the pieces?
Okay, that was the other thing. The one time I decided to really pay attention to that, I was like, didn't he throw those in the air? But I think he was going to. And then all of a sudden something happened and he shoved them in his pocket.
Yeah.
So then later, he was like, well, now I'm kind of curious. I better
I
put this
know
back
what
together.
trying to tell me. So, let's just talk about the cast, I guess.
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox is Marty McFly. And he originally was not doing the movie because he didn't have time because he was doing Family Ties, and Family Ties was huge.
Yeah.
And so they cast Eric Stoltz and it didn't work out. And so then finally the studio was like, okay, he can do it, but he still has to do Family Ties and he can't miss any work.
Yeah.
So he basically was working like 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And would sleep like in random places. It was a whole thing. He also made Teen Wolf before that, I think.
Oh yeah, when was Teen Wolf?
Teen Wolf came out after Back to the Future, but it was filmed before, I think. So originally Claudia Wells played his girlfriend Jennifer Parker, and she still plays in the movie.
Yeah.
But then she had done a pilot for a TV show, and her manager was like, yeah, this show isn't going to get picked up, so go ahead and cast her in the movie. Well, then the pilot got picked up, and so she had to pull out of the movie. This was when Eric Stoltz was still Marty.
Yeah.
And so she had to pull out of the movie so she could do this series. And the series was canceled, like, almost right away. It had like 10 episodes or something. It was canceled. And by the time it was canceled, they had fired Eric Stoltz and rehired her
Oh, jeez.
as Jennifer. I don't even know who was Jennifer in, like, with Eric Stoltz, but yeah. So then she got rehired because the show was canceled, and so she was, yeah. It's weird. She was in the same position as Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, that was
She was there, and it was really weird. Christopher Lloyd is Emmett Brown, Doc Brown, who I guess comes from money, and that's how he can just do all these experiments all the time.
And he's got the syndrome where he looks like he's really, really old and is still now alive.
Still really, really old.
And yeah. And my favorite part is, like, they kind of play that up in the movie because he looks exactly the same,
Yeah.
He's technically supposed to be like in his 60s in 85.
It's so funny because old Doc Brown is just white hair.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him in Taxi?
No.
Oh, you didn't watch Taxi?
I have to see Taxi. No,
I love Taxi. So he was in Taxi, and I don't know why I watched Taxi as a child. This is a small child, but I think he's always looked that way. He's always looked like Doc, and it just is the color of his hair.
And I get like that sometimes people and they lose hair early or the color. So he's always just looks like he's older. And
Leah Thompson is Lorraine Baines McFly. She's so pretty.
She is very pretty.
I'm just kind of running through these because
everybody knows them.
You know who these guys are. Crispin Glover. He is an interesting character and very eccentric to work with. And his mannerisms are all his own in this movie. And freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
I love George McFly.
Yeah, he's great. And I didn't realize until I just when we watched Family Ties that he's on an episode of Family Ties.
Yeah, he's interesting. And then he didn't do the other movies.
I heard there was like a whole thing. He couldn't be in it and they used his likeness. And then there was like problems with that. I would had no, although he's very short-lived in Back to the Future too.
Yeah.
And he's like upside down when they're, and so they just use like his likeness or whatever.
Well, at the end of this Back to the Future 1, it was not even set up for a sequel. Like they didn't know they were going to make another movie. And so at the end, if you remember seeing the to be continued, when you're watching it, it's because you either watched it on VHS or on cable because it wasn't in the original theatrical release and it's not on DVDs. So it was only, for some reason, they put it on the VHS releases because at that time they had made the follow-up movies.
Oh, interesting.
So I never saw it in the theater, so I didn't see it without it.
I did not know that.
But here's a spoiler for you guys. When Back to the Future 2 was made, they didn't have a place for the character of Jennifer in the film. Did you see Back to the Future 2?
Yeah.
Okay. So they didn't have a place for her character. Like at the end of Back to the Future 1, Doc comes and gets them.
Yeah.
And they fly off and they're like, it's your kids, Marty. Something has to be done about your kids.
Right.
They take Jennifer with them. Right. And there's not supposed to be a next movie. So they didn't plot her into Back to the Future 2. So in Back to the Future 2, they just leave her on the porch. They're like, knock her out.
Right.
Leave her on the porch. Because they're like, we don't know what to do. Because we don't want her in the movie.
Yeah,
but we put her in the car.
Yeah.
We don't want her
We're
in
like,
the movie.
all right. So yeah, that's interesting. Because they do
so
see,
weird.
you get to see future Jennifer at one point, but then she's really not part of the whole deal.
Yeah. She wakes up at one point and kind of stumbles around.
Yeah. Well, she ends up in the house.
Yeah. But she's not like for most of them.
Yeah. And then runs into herself and they both pass out. And then, they get her. And then,
And she's played in that one
Elizabeth
Shue because Claudia Wells' mom had cancer. And so she wasn't able to do the follow-up movies. The Mark McClure plays David McFly, and Wendy Jo Sperber is Linda McFly, and they had been in previous Zemeckis films. And so they were like good friends and they loved playing siblings and they had like kind of a sibling relationship in this movie.
Cute.
That is cute. Because I was like, how did they cast this family?
Yeah.
This is the strangest looking family I've ever seen in a movie.
And those two have such small parts.
And they just don't look like family.
Right.
They don't look like siblings
They
in
don't,
any way.
No.
Marty doesn't look like his parents.
No.
It's just like very random, which is fine. I don't care. It's another thing that plays into you need to have a lot of willing suspension of disbelief.
That's true. Yes.
Jason Hervey plays Lorraine's younger brother, Milton. And he is, of course.
We're like, oh look, it's what's his bucket's
It's
brother?
Wayne.
It's Wayne.
It's Wayne from oh my God, what's wrong with me?
Wonder Years.
Wonder Years.
I don't know what I almost just said. Something not the same.
2 TVs? He must be rich.
Oh, he's teasing, honey. Nobody has 2 television sets.
Also, the girl who plays the sister, I don't know what her name is. She was the little girl in Adventures in Babysitting who wore she was obsessed with Thor and she
was?
Yes.
Oh my God. How did I not know
Every
that?
time I see her, I'm like, that's the girl from the movie.
How did I not know that?
Crazy. Because you can't see her very well, especially if you're watching on a small screen.
Yeah, that's true.
Thomas Wilson plays Biff Tannen, who I always thought was Biff Tanner, but that's fine.
Me too, for the longest time.
And yeah, he's a big softie, and not a bully. And I have a love-hate relationship with Billy Zane, who plays Match in this movie, because he's super cute. But I've also heard that he's not a nice person.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
But also, he was in Titanic and he was super cute.
He's super cute in that, and also evil.
Evil. So yeah, so it's like love-hate. Like, I don't know. Who do I believe?
I didn't know that was him in Back to the Future for the longest time because I was never paying attention.
Oh yeah, no, nobody's looking at those guys.
No.
They're in the background.
No.
Nobody cares.
No.
Norman Alden plays cafe owner Lou. Lou, give me a milk. Chocolate. I've seen outtakes where he misses that chocolate.
I bet.
And it's funny. It's hilarious. Because he would. Donald Fullilove appears as Goldie Wilson, future mayor of Hill Valley.
Mayor. Oh, Goldie.
That's a great callback too. Wilson. That's a great callback because in 1955 there's a campaign going on, and then Goldie just uses that exact same campaign in 1985.
Right.
Which is hilarious. Harry Waters Jr. portrays Chuck Berry's cousin Marvin. It's your cousin Marvin. Marvin Berry.
You were looking for a new sound? Well, listen to this.
This is okay. Do you know who John Mulaney is? He's a stand-up comedian.
I feel like I do because I've heard the name.
Okay. He did a stand-up routine about Back to the Future where he breaks down the plot, and it is the most hilarious thing. You have to find it.
Oh my gosh, now I do.
Because, oh my God, it is hilarious. The way that he's like, okay, talking about the writers pitching this movie.
Yeah.
And he breaks it down in the most awful way. Like, it sounds so bad. Courtney Gaines portrays Dixon, who is the redheaded guy who interrupts Lorraine and George at the dance.
Like super creepy.
Yeah. And he also earlier, he's like kicking George in the hallway when Marty first gets there.
Yeah.
He was also in the movie The Burbs. Have you ever seen The Burbs?
I have, but it's been forever.
I love that movie. We do watch that movie. I love that movie. I have the DVD.
Okay.
That's a great movie.
Okay.
Anyway, he comes in, and I don't know why that was like such a weird scene when I was a kid. He just comes in and he like grabs him, and then George just like walks away. And
and he's all dejected, and then just randomly shows back
my
up.
girl. And
Dude, she's yelling for him.
Punched Biff.
She's yelling for him, and he still walks away, which is also weird. Yeah, that scene's a little weird.
Yeah, but then he gets his confidence back,
and then he's like,
"Wait,
excuse me,"
and he kisses her on the dance floor,
him, grabs up her face, and kisses her.
That's where they kiss
I love it.
Fall in love.
Excuse me.
The fish under the sea dance.
Yes. The enchantment under the sea dance.
I have to tell you, I constantly refer to the fish under the sea dance.
I love it.
Anytime that like, if my kids have a dance or something,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
like, "Oh,
"Oh,
you
the
ready to
Fish Under
fish
the
into the
Sea
sea
dance?"
dance?"
Which is a better name.
Yes.
And then James Tolkien portrays Hill Valley High School principal Strickland.
Another guy that doesn't ever age. Doesn't this guy
Right?
ever age?
Exactly. Yeah, he just has a little bit more hair stubble
Yeah,
in the 50s,
yeah.
but he's still old. Hilarious. Why is he so angry?
Yeah, he is very angry, and spoiler, he's in the second one and is also older and the same looking and even more angry.
Mhm. Mhm. There's no other teachers though.
No.
It's just Strickland.
Yeah, that's
That's
true.
fine. It's fine to have a simple cast.
Mhm.
So what is your favorite part of this movie?
Oh
For me, it's
gosh.
Darth Vader coming down and telling him he doesn't take the
Trying
reins.
to melt your brain.
He's gonna melt his brain. I love that part.
Um,
Because, when he gets out of the DeLorean in the 50s and
mhm.
he's about to go and he takes off like his hazmat suit, he puts the things in the seat that he's going to wear
Yeah,
as Darth Vader. Like
yeah.
he's got his hairdryer and his
Headphones and
headphones,
yeah.
his Walkman and the video camera and like you know, and
Mhm.
everything. He shows you in that scene
That's gonna happen.
all the things he
That's
has with
true.
him. Love that. But yeah, what's your favorite? What's your favorite? My
I
favorite
love
part.
the part where he gets to the town when he's in the
That's great.
past.
I love that.
I mean, it's because again, like what we talked about, I feel like it's like that's the dream. Like, but to me, it's just like a flurry of information that comes at him. So this is
Mhm.
clearly a small enough town because of course then he sees everybody, and McFly, and he turns around, "Piff," and then he turns around and he had no idea that his dad was sitting right there. And all of that maybe combined together might be my favorite part, but
Right.
there's like, yeah.
Could you imagine you like go back and your parents are sitting there?
Mhm.
That'd be so weird and
As
odd.
youngsters.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that yeah, how do you not have, like, a freaked out, emotional kinda like, "Oh my gosh." Yeah, every part of this is very, like, very cool and very like, "Oh, how would
Fun.
that" yeah.
It doesn't get boring.
No,
There's no lull. It's all action. It's
no,
all fun.
no.
So then in the end, Lorraine is like, Marty, that's such a nice name.
Yeah.
Isn't Marty the
He
youngest?
is the youngest. I've always said that. Hey, when you guys have kids and
Mhm.
one of them accidentally sets fire to the living room rug, go easy on them.
Right? Marty, such a
Yeah.
nice
Oh,
name.
Marty, what an interesting name. Okay, so here's my theory on that because he's the youngest. So you're having your kids because everybody picks out names that they always wanted for their
Okay.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one comes along. They both got their picks. Maybe he picked the boy, she picked the girl, and then they're like, "Hey, remember that guy? Remember that guy that I was gonna that I liked, and then my dad hit with a car, and
I
then
was making out with
and okay,
right before I made out with you.
and then later is George like, he was coaching me how to win you.
Yes, yes. So he was gonna pretend to assault you,
He was
and
gonna attack
I
you.
was gonna pretend to hit him. And so we had this whole thing planned.
We were gonna trick
We
you
were gonna
into
so trick
being
you.
with me.
Let's name him Marty.
Let's name him after that guy who we never saw again.
Never saw again.
And he just randomly showed up in our lives.
Yeah.
Hey, and now that he's this age, our son kind of looks like that
Right?
guy.
Remember that guy? Does he look familiar?
And we named him this.
Oh my God, Natalie.
Wait a minute. How
Would
does
you
that
think
happen?
if you were George, would you think I never saw Marty again? Did Lorraine see Marty again? This kid looks
Oh,
just
this
like him.
kid looks just like that Marty, and it's named Marty.
Well, see, this is why you can't think about it.
Shoot.
This is why you can't think too hard about Back to the Future, because if you think too hard about it, it doesn't make any
You're
sense.
right. And my other theory is if that happens and you met up with a time traveler,
Mhm.
you don't remember it. But maybe that's how you dream. Because you know what? 'Cause really, did they have this
Um,
kid, name him
uh-huh,
Marty, and then he
uh-huh,
grows up to look like the
uh-huh,
Marty who helped them get together?
uh-huh.
No.
No.
So, it must fade. It must that's what we're
Well, you
gonna go
kinda
with.
remember what people look like.
That's
I
true.
wouldn't see a person. Here's the thing. Sometimes this is so stupid. Sometimes I think I see someone I know,
Mhm.
and I'm like, "I know that person from high school." And then I realize that person is, like, 20 years old. They look
Mhm.
like someone I knew in high school, the way they looked in high school.
Correct.
So,
That's
they're
true.
obviously not them because they would be 30 some years older by now.
Mhm.
So, it's like a Mandela effect.
Yeah.
Like, I'm filling in the blanks.
Right.
I think my kid looks like this kid Marty,
Right.
even though he doesn't look anything like anyone in our family.
Yes.
But
Yeah, maybe you're just like, "He
he
reminds
reminds
me
me of that
of
guy.
that guy." I mean, because if you're George, he played a significant role in your life.
He did.
Lorraine was probably like, "Meh."
Yeah.
Yeah,
He got you guys
but
together.
if you're George, you're like, "Man, he really helped me out." And then and even if he gave him his confidence, kind of.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you can't analyze too
You
much.
can't do exactly what we're
Right
doing
what we're
right
doing
now.
right now.
You can't do that.
Exactly.
Back to the Future is a classic. It's up there with Casablanca and
Yeah,
Gone with the Wind.
yeah.
I'm sorry. It is.
It is. Well, and again, if you haven't seen it, you have to know the premise.
Oh,
And
everybody knows.
I mean, yeah, how does not anybody? That's just the thing. I mean, I remember because when they talk about going into the future, back when it hit 2015 here in
Yeah,
the good
people kinda
US of
went
A,
crazy.
everyone's like, "That's the day
It's
that
the day
Marty
of
went to the
the future day.
future."
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure, like, it was weird because the Cubs did win the World Series or something weird. Anyway, but that's
That's
just it.
right.
So, yeah, everybody kind of is like, it's one of those, like, cult classic kind of
Yeah.
things. So you have to at least know bits and pieces.
People seriously in 2015 were like, "We have to have hoverboards. We have to."
Mhm.
Because Back to the Future said we would.
Right.
We have to.
Yeah. We don't have our flying cars like we wanted.
And then they did the
So
hoverboards and they exploded.
right. Exactly.
But, like, Robert Zemeckis said that what was it, like, October 26th or whatever, 1986 was
Mhm.
when they started the time travel. But that was after I believe that was after the movie was released. The movie was released before October, and so he had
Oh.
said that people like, were swarming this actual mall where they filmed it, the
Mm.
parking lot, on that date to see if Marty showed up. Like, "Are you okay?
Ah,
Are you serious? It's
you
a movie."
you guys don't understand how this works. Okay. My
Right?
god, that's awesome.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
That sounds like something we would
We
do.
would totally do.
But, yeah, I mean, I think most people have seen this movie, but honestly, you haven't seen Star Wars, so
True. That's true. But I know the premise,
yeah, of course
and
you
I
do.
know characters, and I know lines from it because it is so
It's
renowned.
iconic, that's true.
So,
But
that's
I
true.
haven't seen all of Casablanca either, so
Me neither, yeah. So, true
okay.
and interesting. One of our faves by far.
Oh, yeah, I would put this up there in my top 10 movies, absolutely,
Yeah.
and you can watch it, you don't even have to pay attention to
Right,
it.
really forever. And I think that this kind of gave me an idea for future shows on our podcast.
Really?
Um, I feel like we should try this. And you tell me how
Time
crazy I am.
are we gonna time travel? Because 'Cause I'm up
Well,
for that.
well,
I'll do that
I mean that for sure,
for
yes.
sure.
But what I think we should do is come up, and I'm telling this to our listeners, with
Except that I'm the editor, so I can
yes,
cut it out.
that's true. In case it's crazy. That we find it's gotta probably be a movie
Okay,
that both of us are like, "Yep, know it, don't need to watch it,"
okay.
and not watch it, and
Oh,
show up here and talk about it, and then do another show, watch it.
it could be the same show.
Well, yes, that could be the same show. I'm thinking to myself like, to do
Watch it.
that
Okay.
and
Okay.
then see how well we
Okay.
did and watch it and be like, "I didn't remember that
Okay.
part." So
That sounds
that's
good.
yeah, I
I
was all
like
like,
that. I
that might
like
be a good idea."
brainstorming on air.
Yes.
Okay, you're right. We should do that. We should do what's a movie? Like,
I
I
mean, I was
mean,
trying to think of one that
we've
wouldn't
already
I
done
mean,
Dirty Dancing.
well, yeah, and I was like, "Oh, Breakfast Club." Now that's we would nail that too. So I was like,
Yeah,
"I don't know what to do." So we'll have to think on
we'll
that one.
think
If
on it.
anybody has
We'll think on it.
suggestions, if you've heard us talk about something that we both love,
Yeah. Give us a call or
yeah,
send us an email or, whatever. Send it by carrier pigeon.
do that too. We like carrier pigeons, yes.
It's a note for you on the
On the
pigeon.
pigeon.
Okay, well, let's
Alright.
wrap up this episode of TV Tangents, which is a movie tangent about a movie.
Everyone loves.
Thanks for listening, and please find us on Facebook and Patreon. Absolutely. All right, wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Cheers.